DeCastro versus the United States Supreme Court. Again. In the stupidity that was Friday and Jose Chille DeCastro's failing to answer a motion for summary judgment in his lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metro Police Force, we forgot to look at his latest rant about the Supreme Court. DeCastro has used the Supreme Court as a go-to rant for the past year or so, falling into the evils of the Supreme Court when he didn't have anything else to talk about. His July 4th, 2024 address to the public was just another example of this. In his latest speech, he was trying to say that now that the Supreme Court has ruled that presidents have near total immunity, their influence on shaping the court system should end within a few years after they were no longer president. Under DeCastro's newest proposal, members of the Supreme Court would be elected to serve 8-year terms and would be limited to serving 2 terms for a total of 16 years. They would also be able to be impeached for not keeping campaign promises or voting in ways that weren't reflective of the president who appointed them. New to the standard speech this time was his focus on Generation Z and the argument that Supreme Court justices should not be serving on the court if they were appointed before a member of Generation Z was born, as that was giving the presidents from 30 years ago too much power. DeCastro tried to make the argument that Clarence Thomas was appointed in 1991 by George Herbert Walker Bush. Because Bush's presidency ended before members of Generation Z were born, so should Bush's political ideals as reflected in judgments by Thomas. Under this argument, people are static, and ideas don't change over time. Because Thomas, who has become one of the most conservative justices in the history of the court, was appointed so long ago, he serves no value, as ideas will always be static and will always reflect those of George H.W. Bush. It's an interesting idea to say the least, as DeCastro, a member of Generation X, was born during the presidency of Gerald Ford. Ford was never voted into office. He was appointed as a replacement for Spiro Agnew, who retired in 1973. He became president in 1974 after Richard Nixon resigned, making him the only person in history to become both vice president and president without being voted into office. DeCastro's logic could say that since DeCastro was born during Ford, an appointed president, his ideology began and ended with Ford. DeCastro's viewpoint is therefore stuck in 1974, and therefore DeCastro should not be allowed to vote, run for office, or be appointed to government roles, as his ideology reflects President Ford. In DeCastro's logic, Ford's influence should have ended within 16 years of his departure from the presidency. Doing some quick calculations of DeCastro's expiration year, it was 1992, when DeCastro would have turned 18. His political influence would have ended the year he was eligible to vote. I'm somehow good with that. I mean, it would also disqualify me from running for office or wielding political influence, but when did that ever interest me? But then again, if that applies to everyone, those who were born in the years of George W. Bush's presidency, 2000 to 2008, will lose political relevance this year. Those born during Obama's presidency, 2008 to 2016, are still politically relevant until 2032. Those born during Trump's presidency, 2016 to 2020, will be relevant until 2034, and those born during Biden's presidency will be relevant until 2038. If Trump wins the presidency this year, it'll get complicated, as those born in his first term will get a bump until 2042, giving an extraordinary expansion to their political relevancy to the ripe old maximum age of 26. DeCastro logic also means that anyone between the age range of 1 to 16 years of age are politically relevant. Those are our leaders, and they should be looked to in order to secure our future, as ideology never changes, and people should be tied to the president who was in power the year they were born. 1 to 16-year-olds running the world couldn't be more worse than the system we have right now, right, folks? Maybe DeCastro, for once in his life, has a point. Or I needed to fill 2 pages to make a quota. In either case, we all win. DeCastro can't serve, and the rest of us retire from politics, political thought, and political relevance after the maximum age of 26. Sounds like a winner to me. USA! 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 USA!